Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, is a 2014 black comedy drama directed by Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu. Regan Thompson, a 60-year-old faded Hollywood star, writes, stars, and directs in his adaptation of What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver. He wants to not only restart his career, but also legitimize himself after years of being only thought of as Birdman, a superhero character he played in 3 films. Over the course of Birdman, he struggles with his feelings about how he is seen by the public, the choices he made in his life, his relationship with his recovering addict daughter, and the meaninglessness of his own life. He is haunted by a voice in his head, seemingly the Birdman character himself, giving him bad career advice and generally being antagonistic. There are multiple fantasy sequences, some of which Thompson has telekinetic powers, some in which he can fly, and none of which are ever properly explained. He decides to commit suicide, uses a real gun on stage, but only shoots off his own nose. In the final scene, he appears to exit from a window in the hospital. His daughter looks on, but the audience never sees what she sees. There's a lot to discuss with this film, but before even diving into the worlds of literature, theater, popular Hollywood trends, and the inevitable existential crisis we all face when we realize our lives don't amount to anything, let's talk about visuals. To understand the visual style of Birdman, we must first understand the long take, filming a scene in a single unbroken shot. A traditional, modern film scene usually has multiple angles and is edited together to form one coherent scene, whereas a long take is carefully choreographed to incorporate everything needed for the scene without the use of cuts. Historically, the long take was common and invisible in the 1930s and 40s, but somewhere around Alfred Hitchcock's 1948 thriller Rope, the long take became more of a showcase of talent, both of the director and the actors. The film is cut by cleverly moving the camera behind someone's back, cutting there, and continuing the scene. This may have had less to do with Hitchcock's faith in his actors, and more to do with the fact that technological limitations of film reels at the time simply mandated cuts.
What are you worrying about, Philip? After all, old Mr. Kentley's coming mainly to look at these books.
So why use a long take as opposed to a modern traditional shot involving multiple cameras and multiple angles? Sometimes it's simply practical. Multiple angles require many takes and reshoots to get everything perfect. But if the director has faith that the actors can nail it in one shot, it can save time and money. It's a roll of the dice, of course, but the long take can be employed less for artistic reasons and more for practical and financial reasons. As for the long take as a stylistic choice, it can be used to invoke various emotions. In this famous scene from Children of Men, we are strapped to the action of this car chase. Our heroes are making a getaway, all while being hunted and attacked from all angles. By watching everything in real time and without cuts that remind us we are only watching a movie, the director is putting us inside the car, forcing us to share the experience with the characters. In this scene from Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese gives us a long take with the intention of seeing an unbroken, unfiltered look at our protagonist's world. Long takes sacrifice the ability to quickly cut and focus on a specific object or close up on someone's face suddenly, but the added effects can counterbalance this loss. There are countless other examples, but let's get back to Birdman and how it looks like one long take. It's not, by the way. It's intercut with other things, but it looks like it is, much like in Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. Depending on how one counts the quick shots towards the end, right before the hospital, and where the film is really cut, Birdman has somewhere between 16 and 20-something shots. Some cuts may be so invisible that an exact number is near impossible to verify. With that technicality out of the way, why was the long take used in this film? Was it practical? A matter of suspense? The clearest and easiest to explain reason for the long takes in Birdman stems from its setting, the theater. In theater, there are no second takes. Birdman is partly about East Coast Broadway sensibilities combating West Coast Hollywood sensibilities. Thompson is struggling with his new role in the theater, and by showing him in long takes, showing his offstage life feeling like a stage life, we are seeing him adjust, sometimes not very well, to his new surroundings. The frenetic pace, the added pressure, the tight, narrow hallways, all of this is meant to express his feelings about his new theater setting. The other reason is to create a sense of impending doom. One take, one long take, one final act. He is cornered. He has nowhere to go. The camera is on him even when he leaves the room, walks down the hall. It follows him. There is no escape. The drum beats in the background. What's impressive about the long takes is that they still capture everything. This scene shows a few people talking at a table, but the camera rotates in such a way that it is always facing the character who has the most to say. Nothing is missed. This is challenging even outside the realm of single camera scenes. These long shots don't miss much. This scene mimics over-the-shouldered angles for dialogue mentioned in a previous episode of Renegade Cut. Instead, because there is a single camera, we see the person speaking and the person to whom he is speaking in the mirror. In short, because the long takes are handled so well, the pace of the film is enhanced, and absolutely nothing is lost. A rare achievement for a film that uses such risky camera work. The story within the story, Raymond Carver's What We Talk About When We Talk About Love, is more than just something occurring in the background and moving the plot along. Raymond Carver was a short story writer and poet. His stories often followed down-and-out characters dealing with their lives, usually with stark realism. Carver's story, What We Talk About When We Talk About Love, centers heavily around four friends talking about a man named Ed, an abusive ex-boyfriend who stalks two of the characters, and eventually commits suicide because he can't have the woman he loves. He shoots himself. We only get short glimpses into the adapted play, but there is something about Thompson's performance that is never explicitly stated but ties into everything else in the film. In the scene around the table, Thompson is playing Mel, a character from the short story, but in this story, it is Ed who shoots himself because he feels unloved. So Thompson apparently plays Ed as well in the final scene. Regan Thompson, in the main thrust of the film, not his adapted play, is also a man of dual nature. He is battling his inner demon, Birdman, and trying to be a new man. He is torn between the fame, popularity, and money from his days as Birdman and what he wants for himself now that he's in the theater. He talks to himself. He literally talks to himself.
I've got this little voice that talks to me sometimes. Tells me the truth. It's comforting. Kind of scary, but it's comforting.
I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear you say that.
Okay.
The short story is also important because much of Birdman is actually about love. Thompson's feelings of inadequacy because he wasn't there to love his daughter's feelings of lost love having an absent father, Thompson's failed marriage, his faltering new relationship, and most importantly to the film, his desire for the love of others. Admiration. It is echoed in Ed's suicide as Thompson, through his character, talks about not being loved.
What's the matter with me? Tell me what's the matter. Why do I always end up having to beg people to love me?
Shane, please, just give me the gun. It was me. I was drowning. I'm just not capable of... You deserve to be loved, and you do.
Raymond Carver's short story is not the only literary reference in Birdman. In this scene, Thompson is on his way back to the theater. A man on the sidewalk is loudly shouting. He doesn't say so, but it's plainly a piece of Act 5, Scene 5 from Macbeth. In the famous play, it is at this time that the English troops, led by Malcolm and Macduff, are approaching Macbeth's castle. This is significant to Birdman because both this soliloquy and this moment in the film have the central figure worried about their impending doom. Everything is building towards a bloody climax. But there's more. It's in this scene that Macbeth acknowledges that his life is meaningless, a brief candle, as he puts it, that is quickly snuffed out. A tale told by an idiot, sound and fury signifying nothing. This is echoed when Thompson is about to shoot himself, telling everyone that he doesn't exist. It should also be mentioned that this soliloquy references the stage, providing even greater foreshadowing to what is about to come. In addition to modern literature like Raymond Carver and a play from approximately 1606, Birdman also references mythology from ancient writings centuries earlier, giving the film a broad view of both fiction and humanity. Specifically, it references Icarus multiple times. In Greek mythology, Icarus and his father, Daedalus, try to escape from Crete. Daedalus makes Icarus wings out of feathers and wax. He warns Icarus not to fly too close to the sun or too close to the ocean, or else he would die. Icarus ignores this and perishes. It's a fable about both hubris and complacency. Not too high, not too low. Thompson's hubris after playing Birdman in 3 movies made him fly too high. He lost his wife, ruined his relationship with his daughter, attempted suicide, and was generally unhappy and depressed. And now he is in the opposite world, a figurative ocean in which he is drowning.
I don't know if you noticed, but that was 1992.
You could jump right back into that suit if you wanted to. We're not dead.
Look at me. Look at this. Look. I look like a turkey with leukemia.
That is the clearest reason why the superhero is Birdman at all. So let's talk about hubris. It is explained remarkably well in this scene. Sam Thompson, Regan's daughter, recently got out of rehab for drug abuse. She is working through an exercise she learned while rehabilitating. On this roll of toilet paper, every dash represents 1,000 years. Only one sheet of paper is the time in which human beings have existed, and only a fraction of one dash is the length of one human life, explaining the unimportance of one life. Of course, there are two ways of looking at this. One way, the manner in which Regan Thompson sees it, is that his life has become meaningless, and because of this, he must end it. He attempts to do this on stage. The other way to view this insignificance of one's life can create a kind of peaceful humility. A life without hubris, without ego, without listening to the voice in your head that insists that you be prideful. A lofty, if difficult, goal. Of this, the director has said, quote, "I got tired of that voice inside my head. I started meditating 5 years ago, and now I'm so much more aware of how those voices work. Once you begin to be aware of it, you are in a way safer spot, because at least you identify. So I thought this could be an amazing thing for me to explore, but how am I going to explore something that is so self-conscious, so abstract? It's more about the personal process of creating something that I feel everybody has in them." Unquote.
You hate bloggers, you mock Twitter, you don't even have a Facebook page. You're the one who doesn't exist. You're doing this because you're scared to death, like the rest of us, that you don't matter. And you know what? You're right. You don't. It's not important, okay? You're not important. Get used to it.
In addition to the radical use of long takes and heavy literary influences, Birdman also uses very basic but well-crafted devices to further the story, notably foreshadowing. The film opens with a quote, "And did you get what you wanted from this life, even so? I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth." This is a theme of the film, being loved, but it is also foreshadowing Regan Thompson's suicide attempt. Although it's not said in the film, this quote is on Raymond Carver's grave. There is a lot going on in this movie, but let's take a brief aside and discuss superhero films. This subgenre of action is easily the most popular and most explosive force at the box office today. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, the X-Men films, and the fledgling DC Cinematic Universe are the hottest properties in Hollywood right now, invading both film and television. Audiences love this resurgence in superheroes. Big-name directors and writers have become involved, lending credibility and legitimacy to this phenomenon. And yet, some filmmakers have spoken very negatively about this recent popular trend. Inarritu himself has, in an interview, called the rise of the superhero film cultural genocide, which is incredibly overblown and even ignorant. Superhero films have reached incredible heights of late, ranging from spy thrillers to space operas. It has become both cleverly put together and diverse. Because of what the director has said, there is a sense that his apparent snobbery has tainted an otherwise beautiful film.
If you will, are you at all afraid that people will say you're doing this play to battle the impression that you're a washed-up superhero?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's why 20 years ago I said no to Birdman 4. That's why.
However, it should be noted that Inarritu has said that Birdman isn't actually about superheroes or blockbusters. It's about hubris. Quote, "I never wanted to make this film from a bitter side, from a preachy side, or saying what is right and what is wrong. To make a film to complain? That was not the main theme. This is basically the point of view of the theater actor Mike Shiner, played by Edward Norton, who feels that way." Unquote. And that makes sense. Shiner is called out on his nonsense by Thompson and other characters over the course of the film. In fact, he is the most irredeemable character in Birdman. If his opinion is that blockbusters are worthless, his opinion is probably the least important in the picture. Inarritu has very negative things to say about superhero movies in interviews, but that's not what Birdman is about. Also, it should be noted that this film was written by 4 people, only one of which was the director. Thompson's imagination, a voice in his head, thinking he has telekinetic powers, flying, all that, might lead some to believe that the character is mentally disturbed and hallucinating, or that he has actual superpowers, but this is not meant to be taken that way. Thompson's powers are always shown to be figurative and an expression of his inner conflict. When he seemingly uses his powers to destroy his dressing room, he is then shown in the next scene to actually be tearing it apart with his hands. Once someone else is in the room, reality sets in for the audience. This is also true for the conclusion of the flight scene. When he lands, nobody gasps at the flying man because he isn't flying. Then a taxi driver runs after Thompson, asking the actor to pay his fare. That makes the ending that much more confusing and delicate to explain. After Regan Thompson exits the hospital through the window, is this the start of another fantasy sequence for him? Or is he actually attempting suicide again? How does Sam apparently see him fly afterwards? She's looking up and smiling. One interpretation is that Thompson has left Birdman behind, sitting on the toilet, and now he can figuratively fly on his own. Sam can see it because she has finally connected with her father. The father and daughter have attained the love they were trying to gain throughout the entire film, and it came not from drugs or from fame, but from each other. That is just one interpretation though, there are countless. What do the screenwriters say? Alexander Dinelaris Jr., one of the four, said only this, quote, "We're not going to sit around and explain the ending. I guess my thing is, if you can silence the voice of mediocrity, then what is possible? That is good enough for me. But we thought if we answered that question at the end, it would seem very, very small. Is he famous because he shot himself? That's small. Is he still miserable? That's small. Everything seemed small." Unquote. There are 4 writers, and honestly, each could have their own interpretation. So, there are a myriad ways of seeing the ending. There are fan theories that suggest Thompson died when he jumped out the window, and that Sam's vision was just her own delusion, similar to her father. There are theories that Thompson died in the theater, and that everything wrapped up a little too neatly for him in the hospital. The hospital could just be a near-death hallucination, or even the afterlife. Anyway, however one views the ending, Birdman is a masterpiece of technique, form, and genuine heart. The main character is a movie star, but his feelings about his legacy, about love, about ego, these are all parts of everyday life. Not fantasy, real life. Thanks for watching.